what's up? This is John with the Dr. John Delony Show. I hope you're doing well. Hope your neighbors and you are getting along. Hope you're being kind to the people all around you. Hope you're at work. Hope your family's doing well. I hope everything is going okay. Today we've got a special episode. I'm going to interview a Nashville legend, Miss Sissy Goff. She is the Director of Child and Adolescent Counseling at Daystar Counseling here in Nashville, Tennessee. She's been counseling kids for 30 years. And one of the things I love to do when I sit down to talk to mental health professionals is I like to pretend that I'm asking them questions for you guys. I like to pretend I'm asking them these big, global, theoretical, practical questions for others. But reality, I'm just asking questions because I'm just a fumbling dad trying to figure this out myself. And I got 2 little kids. I'm married. I got 2 dogs running around. I've got neighbors. I'm trying to figure this out too. And so on the special edition, I'm talking to Sissy Goff about raising daughters, raising sons, how to be married amidst all this chaos. What do you say to your kid when they come to you and ask you what racism is, what COVID-19 means? Why can't we hang out? What about politics? How do we navigate these messy issues with little ones? We're so glad you're with us. Stay tuned. Okay, so we were just talking offline. Tell me about your practice here in Nashville.
So we see kids from about 4 up through 18, and we have individual counseling and we have group counseling. And then we have, in the summer, we have 2 different kind of summer programs. One's like day camp, and then we have an overnight retreat program too for the kids that are involved.
And how many families are you running through there?
1,900 currently.
A year?
Well, no, just right now in our practice, we're seeing 1,900 families.
Holy, so you'll rotate out.
Yeah.
Thousands.
Yeah. Yes. And I've been doing it almost 30 years. So I don't even know how many thousands of
You're not
kids
even
I've
30
seen.
years old.
That
There's no
is so
way.
kind.
There's
Thank
no
you.
way.
Thank you.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh. Okay. So one of my favorite things about sitting down with mental health professionals is I like to ask veiled questions about your expertise about my own kids and family. So I
Yes.
can sound like I'm speaking to the masses when really I'm trying to just steal insights from you and that I can take back to my own house.
Wow.
And that makes me happy.
You've got the same expertise. So.
No, you got 30. No, I don't have to say that. So I wish. So your most recent book, Brave, A Teen's Girl's Guide to Beating Worry and Anxiety.
Yes.
Tell me about the origin of this.
So, well, pre-COVID, our publisher, actually based on another book called Are My Kids on Track, came to me and said, will you write a book on anxiety for little girls? And you would totally get this. I was like, not unless I can write one for parents too. Because
yes,
everybody's involved.
It doesn't matter, right?
So I wrote pre-COVID one for elementary age girls, because that's the average age of onset these days, and one for parents. And then the pandemic started. And all of a sudden, I wasn't as worried about the little girls, but I was worried about teenagers. And so at that point, I thought I need to write one for them too. And so I cranked out this Brave book in like 10 weeks.
Good for you.
Because, we were home and kind of bored at that point anyway.
The most common question I'm asked, above and beyond any other question, is what has happened in the last 25 years that has made everyone so anxious and depressed? And I've got my own theories and whatever about it. If you had to walk back, you've been in practice 5 years and all of a sudden you watch stuff just start to turn underneath us, right?
Right.
Where would you point a mom and her dad who's just sitting there with their face in their hands? Where would you point them to some of the origins of this madness?
Well, genetically, if a parent, you have anxiety, your kids are 7 times more likely. And then I think technology is a huge piece of it, just what it does to our brains in terms of almost mimicking a state of anxiety. Social media is a huge part of it. I also really believe, and I read.
I love how you
trying to graciously say this.
Yes.
Yeah. I read 23 books on anxiety to get ready, so I did a lot of research. And the 2 most common parenting strategies are escape and avoidance. Mm. So the child feels concerned or worried, and the parent pulls them out.
Yes.
And I think that's making the problem worse. And part of it, I think, you're a lot younger than I am, but part of it, I think, is we grew up and our parents weren't in counseling.
No.
Of course, weren't even talking about any of these things. And likely, I wasn't, my age group wasn't in counseling. Yours might have been more, maybe.
No.
And so I think we're seeing a lot of parents who are overcompensating for what they feel like they didn't get. And so now they're trying so hard to understand and empathize that they're stopping there. And in the books, I have it broken down into understanding, help, and hope.
Okay.
And it's like they're doing a great job with the understanding, but not moving them into help and the coping skills to work through it.
And so they end up blazing this trail ahead of them so that their kids will be okay.
Totally. Yes.
Which then robs them of the ability to learn some of these skills.
Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah. And in the books, I came up with this definition that anxiety is an overestimation of the problem and an underestimation of themselves.
Okay. So it's that gap between what I can do and what I think I need to be doing.
Totally. And when we rescue them, we're saying, yep, it's too big and you're too small. Exactly.
So then they run up against the next thing and they immediately start looking around for who's going to pluck them out, right?
Right.
Okay. So I have a 5-year-old girl. And
is she your oldest?
She's my youngest.
She's your youngest.
I've got two.
Okay.
So yeah, she's my youngest. I got a 10-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl.
That's fun.
It's super fun. And my wife she graduated with her PhD before me. We were so arrogant after our son. Like after a couple of years, we just thought everyone else sucks at parenting. We're geniuses. Clearly, we need to quit our jobs and go teach people how to do this. Yes. And then my daughter came along, and we realized we have no idea what we are doing, right? We just rolled the dice on the first round. What should I be doing now? What can I be doing? This is me not professionally. This is me coming to you humbly. What can I be doing right now to make sure, or to at least put some breadcrumbs along the way so that my daughter can have as good a body image, as good a reflection image as possible? I've heard everything from it's the dad's responsibility to make sure your daughter grows up healthy. I've heard that all she will do is watch my wife's the way my wife processes her own image, and she'll grow. I've heard everything in between. Tell me a few things I can do right now to instill that in her. Well,
I don't know that I would say I wouldn't probably land in either place. The older I get, the less black and white I am. Yeah. So, I mean, I think to think about food as fuel, obviously, to talk about strength instead of ever talking about weight. I mean, I've had so many moms over the years who are critical of their daughters' bodies. And I jokingly say I've never had a girl who says, my mom told me I need to lose some weight, and she says, let me get on that. Never. Never. Yes. It backfires every time. Yeah. And so I think as a dad, I definitely think it's great to tell her she's beautiful inside and out, that you're talking about all of where beauty comes from in her, and that it's really resonating inside of her more than anything, and that flows outward. But I think, too, you as a dad have this, I think as women we're so intense, and I think as men you have this ability to have a lightheartedness and help them move toward risk-taking in a way that is challenging but in a playful tone.
Okay.
And so I think when she learns that she's capable and strong and she can step into things with you that are out of her comfort zone, I think that capability and competence are, linked to self-image and even body image. I think it all runs together.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think speaking to the strengths of who she is and helping grow her confidence and an ability in a way that's very unique to who you are as a man, I think
How do you grow a kid's confidence besides letting them try and fail? It seems to be the link, right?
Yeah, I think that's a huge
I can't just tell them.
Right. But you do that too.
Right.
I mean, I think it's both. I mean, they're going to roll their eyes and she's going to say, you have to say that because you're my dad. Yeah. But I would say it anyway.
Okay.
I have a friend who is really confident, probably one of the most confident women I know. And we were at a dinner party one time, and she said that when she was growing up, every time she walked down the stairs of her home, like every time, no matter how she was dressed, her dad whistled the theme song to Miss America.
Oh, wow. Huh?
Isn't that awesome? Which, I mean, she was never in a pageant in her whole life, but I love that he was saying, when you walk in the room, I'm going to stop and pay attention to you.
Yep.
And I think just that level of engagement even plays into her confidence in a really significant way. And that's not taking her on some elaborate date.
No, it's just the little things. Yeah.
Yes, totally.
I notice that my kids, from however different they are, they both, if I were to distill them down into one sentence, one question, it would be, please see me. And that seems to be the most pervasive, overarching thing about their behavior, whether my son is trying to get straight A's, my daughter's trying to set something on fire, or vice versa, right? It is, please see me. right? And if every time I can jump the front of the line and make sure they know before they even have to perform,
yes,
I see you just because you're you, right?
Yeah.
It just seems the air in the room gets lighter, right? Okay, so one of the things you wrote about in your book, which I love, and you made my nerd heart feel good. You talk about this idea of co-rumination, right? Mm-hmm. So we talk a lot about on this show this idea of rumination. This idea is it's just spinning and spinning, and we think that we are thinking about important things, and so we give ourselves a pass, right? So we'll sit there and have imaginary conversations that we're never going to have,
Yes.
right? We flex that in a toughness that we absolutely are not, right? But we're thinking about hard things, about when the world's going to end and how much bullets we're going to have, all the stuff, right?
Yes, non-productive thinking, yeah.
But then you get into co-rumination in this balance between we have a dance, right, where I just spend all my time telling you how bad things are, and you give me an audience, right? How do I balance that in my kids? Right? Because I want them to be heard and I want them to be listened to. And I think one of the worst things men do is we run in and try to give facts-based solutions to everything instead of just being with, right, and listening. How do I both hear and avoid that co-rumination cycle that's just such a mess?
You know, I think where I think it can be, I love to think about Marriage Counseling 101. You know, the first time you ever go to marriage counseling, and one of the first things you learn to do is reflective listening.
Yep.
What I hear you saying is, and it sounds so silly.
Stop solving. You listen. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I remember being in graduate school when they taught that and me thinking that's not going to do a thing. And then all of a sudden it's magical when you do it. And so I think no matter what age your kids are, to be able to say back, I really hear that you're frustrated, or I get that you're worried about that, or I understand. I mean, seeing them and saying it back to them. And then I'm a huge fan. I always just talk about empathy and questions. Yep. Sometimes that's the only thing I'll say to a parent in a whole session. So being empathetic and then moving towards, what do you want to do about it? What do you feel like God's called you to do in this? Who do you want to be in this? Because I think when we're fixing it for them, when we're problem solving for them, we're going back to that definition of anxiety. Not only can you not do it, you can't even figure it out. And so I've got to do it for you. But when we come back with questions, empathy and then questions, we're saying, I think you're capable. Like, you got this.
So there's that. I live by two creeds. One, you don't need to say anything to your kids because they're watching you. If you want them to live a certain way, you have to live it because they're watching you.
Yes.
And the second is let them know that they're seen. But that takes out my core defense mechanism, which is my advice, right?
Right.
So I want everyone listening to this to hear someone way smarter than me. On most occasions, the last thing your kids need is
advice.
Your advice.
Yes.
How do you teach a parent to shut up? To just stop talking? You like how I did that? I pointed it to parents being the listeners, but I'm talking about
That was good. You know, I mean, what I will do in my counseling office is say, I met with a couple recently, and they're repeating the same thing over and over and over, especially with adolescents. By the time you hit that point, they've heard everything you have to say. All of it. And so I said to this couple, has she heard you say that before? And they said, yes. And then I said, then stop saying it. What she needs now is for you to feel like she likes you. Period.
Yes. Just shut up. Hey, my sister and I have a joke. My dad was it was a SWAT hostage negotiator. So he cut people off a bill, right?
Wow.
And we have this fireplace in our old childhood home where my dad would sit in one recliner and my mom, and I've told the story publicly so they won't be embarrassed. And they would talk to us, and we know how many bricks were in the fireplace because we'd heard it.
Yes.
We knew.
You just glaze over.
We knew, and you glaze over, right? And it was that idea of being talked at versus talked with, right?
Yes.
Or heard. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this is maybe a messier question. Since we know the kids watch you, right? Mm-hmm. Give me, the universal husband here, some tips on how I can love my wife. How can I love my partner enough in ways that my daughter and even my son will pick that up, right? Because I want her not to have a frontal lobe understanding of what love is, but I want her to see it. What are some things that couples get wrong when it comes to loving each other in a way that's demonstrative?
Well, I think with girls in particular, girls are so intuitive from a really early age, and they start to pick up on the differences in your parenting, and they start to manipulate it.
So good.
And so I feel like one of the best things we can do for girls is to present a unified front.
Okay.
Over the years, I've had way too many stories of things like, I remember a girl sitting in my office and saying to me, well, my mom's really strict, and my dad and I think, which however she filled that in, it's scary already. Yeah, they're like investing in counseling already, or marriage counseling maybe for her later. And so I think enjoying your wife, presenting a unified front. I mean, of course, you're going to have disagreements, but arguments need to be had behind closed doors. And I would recommend 2 sets of closed doors because girls listen at the first set. I mean, I hear so many girls talking about sitting at the top of the stairs and listening to their parents argue downstairs, you know. So I think those are probably 2 of the best things.
So I've gotten advice in the past to argue in front of your kids, not wildly, so that they can see an arc of a relationship where this is what a disagreement between 2 people who love each other. And then the next morning they're having breakfast together and everybody's smiling and laughing. That must be what that looks like, right?
Yes.
What's the balance between that? I guess that's the balance between that disagreement versus we need to get behind closed doors and take the gloves off for a minute.
Heated.
Okay.
Yes, really angry. And I think specifically if it's about them. Because what'll happen is if it's about them, one of you is often going to be siding with your child and feeling like the other parent is being too strict. And so when that happens, that's where I think girls can step into all that Freud stuff.
They start owning you.
Yes, I'm going to triangulate myself in here between my parents. And so I think those are the arguments that feel more concerning to me as primarily a counselor to girls, that they're going to start to work that later on.
Is it true that, I hope it's true because I say it almost every single show
It's
here.
true. Whatever it is.
That you alluded to this, kids feel the relational tension.
Yes.
And they tend to backfill that tension with, it must be my fault. And they start trying to solve it in these ways. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely they do. Yeah.
And they start solving it. It's been my experience that kids, whether they get into stuff that we've all said is not a good idea, whether it's they're going to run off and make straight A's, they're going to tuck their shirts in, and they're going to try to perfect their body image. That really, on the arc, is the same behavior. It just, we reward some of it, unfortunately, and then it can still pathologize itself. It can still get off the rails there, and then we go to war against other behaviors. But really, they're just trying to, I guess it goes back to being seen, but they're just trying to perform, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, that's, with anxiety right now, girls are leading the statistics. And boys are taken in for treatment more, whereas girls are more anxious. And I think it's because of exactly what you said. I think boys often are more explosive, and so we're seeing their behavior, and it's concerning. And girls who are anxious,
they're imploding from the inside out.
And they're perfectionistic, and they're doing great in school. And parent-teacher conferences, the teachers say, I wish every child was like her. But we're missing that it's fueled by the same thing, this panic inside of, I've got to live up to the expectations.
So how do you, man, you're going to get me all fired up here, and it's just the middle of the day. So what do I say as a parent? I know my daughter's not doing well. And the teacher is saying, you can feel your 7-year-old, your 12-year-old, your 14-year-old start to withdraw.
Yeah.
They're still checking the boxes, right? They're going to school. They're still getting the grades good enough. You know you're losing your kid, and you can't put your finger on it. And you got a teacher, you got a pastor at some church, you've got adults and their soccer coach saying, I would do anything for a team full of those, right? And then I got a boy who's a knucklehead and rambunctious and so kind and so compassionate, and you can watch them grinding through that distraction to get their grades. And I've got a teacher saying, I don't want that kid in my class anymore. How do you equip? What would you equip parents with to go into those conversations?
Well, I think I would say trust your gut as a parent, because you're going to have a million people.
You see that? She's making me look so smart. Oh my gosh. Dude, this whole episode, everybody's just for me. It's 100% for me. I have a low self-esteem, and she's making me feel better. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you know your child better than anybody. And I think just like with our health, you've got to advocate for yourself and for your child. And so even if it takes you saying things and putting yourself out there and going back over and over, trust your gut and follow it.
So as someone who works with families a lot, how many times, you have your own kids?
No.
Okay, you don't? Okay.
We've counseled thousands of them over the years, but I have a 2-year-old nephew.
Okay, so how would you answer this question for me then? The longer I go, the more I wish I could walk back. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. How do you teach a parent to forgive themselves? How about that? The more I go, I go, oh gosh, I wish I could have that conversation back, or I wish I could. How do you not let that pile up as a parent? And you can begin to discharge that pain and then move on, right? You can't keep carrying that around with you.
Well, I mean, I think it all gets used at some point. And if this generation of kids is feeling more pressure than ever before to be a perfect parent, the fact that you weren't is only going to help them alleviate that when they get to their own parenting. And I think, again, you're younger than I am, but I think so many of us never had parents who said, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? And kids today feel so much pressure to be perfect. And so as their hero, for you to say to them, I blew it, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? Even if it's 5 years later, I've been thinking about a conversation we had once. And I wish I'd done that differently. Like, what a powerful message for them that validates and values them.
I think saying I'm sorry to your kids is the most important thing you can do. Is that fair?
Yes, absolutely. It's fair. Yes.
I think anybody apologizing to anybody these days is pretty awesome.
Yes. And failing in front of them.
Yeah. And then say, man, I blew that one.
Yes.
And come with me as I go make it right.
Yes. That's so good.
At what point, or let me just back up. This year was a mess. We all experienced it.
Yes.
Our kids experienced it, and every single parent I know, from a parent of 4-year-olds to parents of 24-year-olds, had to navigate, how much do I tell my kid? When do I tell them? What do I tell them? How much do I shield them from, hide them from, etc.? What insights do you give to parents when they are navigating how much of these issues, COVID, George Floyd racism stuff, and politics, how much of that, how do you teach a parent to navigate that?
Well, the first thing I would say is you always want to be the source as their parents in all things. They need to feel like they know where you are on things and that they can come to you with anything. And so when we avoid topics, I think we take ourselves out of being the source a lot of times. And so I would say start young, especially if you feel like they've heard about it somewhere else, and give them really short, just less than a paragraph of information.
Gotcha.
Hey, we have this pandemic that started in our world. Tell me what you've heard. I mean, I would immediately go back to them and let them tell you, because often they haven't heard much, or they've heard something wacky at school that's so off what's accurate. And I think so many times we end up having those conversations out of our own panic. And so we give them more information than they even need. But it's about us and it's not about them.
Yes, I've got to offload this instead of help.
Yes, totally. So I would say a little bit, then tell me what you've heard, and then ask me questions. And then that way, again, they're kind of leading, because in all things, even if we were talking about parents getting divorced, kids ask the questions that they're ready for the information. And if they don't ask, they can't handle it a lot of times.
Okay.
So those would be my main things, I would say, in terms of.
And it's been my experience that if you are going to engage in a kid, you got to tell the truth.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
I've just seen too many folks round about the truth or lie to their kids or skip over stuff, and then suddenly 5-10 secrets always come out. They always come out. Yeah. I'd rather hard things come out and my kid know my dad's an idiot, but he tells the truth, versus my dad lied to me. Right.
Yes.
I'd much rather this over that. Yeah.
Yes.
So what's the one thing as a parent I got to know? Me and my wife are sitting there looking at our 2 kids running around the yard. Tell us what we need to know right now.
Well,
Sissy Goff, help me.
I think we would probably, as a staff at Daystar, collectively say that we have had more parents in our offices in tears in the last 6 months than we've ever had. I've ever seen.
100% have experienced that too.
Yeah. And so I would say, number one, you're doing great. Listening. You're doing great.
Yeah.
with your kids, whatever's going on with them, that just the fact that you're here and showing up and trying right now in 2021 means you're doing great.
We gave Josephine cigarettes for the first time. She got super calm last night, and I'm going to tell my wife
that's not great.
Are doing great. No, I'm just
Yeah, I think that's one thing I would say. And then, the other thing, as I was writing the first 2 books on anxiety, it was pre-pandemic. And one of the things I was worried about is how I felt like kids were less resilient than they had been in generations. And I think we were part of it. Like all those living my best life t-shirts and hashtag best day ever, all that stuff, which, by the way, I haven't heard in a year.
Nope.
But I think we were making it worse because they felt like something's wrong with me because I'm going through something hard.
Yep.
And I firmly believe the kids growing up right now are going to be more resilient than kids that we've seen in generations.
By 100 miles.
Yes, I think there's so much hope.
Yeah. I've even seen some preliminary studies that kids have adapted, especially young kids, to usually there's a focus on mouths when you're talking to, and they're already being able to shift and recognize eye crinkles and so quick. And so some of these things I was so freaked out about may end up not coming to pass. And it ends up being my drama that I'm passing on to my kids than, as opposed to me trying to protect them in any noble way or whatever. So, all right. So Sissy Goff, child counselor extraordinaire. Thank you for a short amount of time. You're so awesome. There's few people that come through here that everyone is saying, oh, they're a great person that you should interview. And my kids go there, right? So this isn't like a high level referral, or this is like, no, this is where my colleagues put their money and put their most trusted resource. So these 2 books, extraordinary. Where can people go get these?
Anywhere books are sold, and we have a website that's raisingboysandgirls.com.
Excellent. Raisingboysandgirls.com. Sissy Goff. If you have a child, I was going to say, if you have a child struggling with anxiety, I'm just going to refine that. If you have a child, you should pick up these 2 books. Thank you so much for your time. You're a
so
saint.
Fun to be here.
And I hope you guys keep doing the great work that y'all are in our community. Thank you so much. Hey, thank you so much for joining me and my new friend, Sissy Goff. If you're interested in her books, if you've got kids that are struggling with anxiety, if you've got daughters who are struggling with anxiety, check out the show notes, and we will list the resources there. I hope everybody in your life's doing well. We're not going to have any lyrics today. We're just going to end it here. Thank you for joining us with the Dr. John Delony Show.